That night, the three of us snuck out to the hut of the Black Canoe, and under the flicker of torchlight I recorded to my sketchbook this unique find. Professor Osborne had been reviewing many of his journals and discovered a few clues that might give some hint at its use. There was a legend of a far-off reef that only rises from the ocean bed on a special dark night. On that night, the villagers would go to the reef and give sacrifice of fish to the fisherman god to ensure safe passage of the people whenever at sea. The only way to safely approach the reef island is in a ceremonial dark canoe. This had to be the same boat, and the Black Night was only 2 weeks away. We needed more information. It took us almost a week and a heavy bribe in bottles of finest brandy to find someone who would talk to us. He was of a very advanced age, and Osborne was not entirely sure of his mental state, but he seemed our only hope to learn more about the reef island and ceremony. The old man told of a legend many generations before the arrival of Polynesians to Rarotonga. The island reef remained above the waves, and on it lived a race of fishermen and their god. They ruled the world before the advance of mankind, but due to some unknown force, the island sank to the depths where the god and his minions sleep, waiting for the chance to rule again. Trader Jim was most excited to hear that on the island an unknown civilization had once lived. Here surely would be a source of some truly amazing artefacts. I must be honest, it wasn't only Jim that was getting fascinated by the tales. We all became more and more desperate for facts and the chance to see this place of island lore. After hearing the elder's story, we were about to go when he insisted that we take a native-made bottle in exchange for the brandy we had bartered with him. The bottle, he maintained, contained a liquid that would take us on a journey to a spirit place, a dream place, where the elderly and infirm of the island went. With these tales racing through our minds, we all slept poorly the following nights, all dreaming of black islands, angry gods, and the screams of men. I don't know if it was the lack of sleep or the isolation on the island, but our team became more determined to visit the dark reef. The old man had given us the bearing to head for. All we needed was for the special night to arrive. I can feel it working. The days before that fateful night were tense on the island. The villagers were all preparing for the ceremony and talking less and less to us. We were also secretly preparing ourselves. We had a plan. True to the words, the dark night came, a night sky of liquid black with no stars, just a sickly pale light from a sliver of moon. As the villagers started the ceremony, chanting and dancing around a large fire they had set on the beach, we crept through the jungle and quietly stole the unguarded canoe from the hut and headed out to the sea. The crew of 5 were Trader Jim, Osborne, myself, Carlos, and one of the students. We'd been paddling for about 20 minutes when the student noticed a singular phenomenon. We thought they were large fish or dolphins swimming up to and alongside the canoe, but as they got closer, Osborne shouted that he thought he saw human features, strange amphibian-like faces. But either they couldn't or didn't want to get too close to the boat for us to see clearly. Further 20 minutes and our destination came into sight. This was not a reef. It was a huge, with mountains and strange-shaped rocky outcrops, but no tropical paradise, a black and foreboding place, with no palms or vegetation. Leaving our strange escorts behind in the surf, we finally pulled the black canoe of Rarotonga up onto the black sand beach. After a whispered discussion, we decided to stay together and explore inland, following what seemed to be a rough trail leading from the beach up towards one of the strange rocky outcrops. It was Professor Osborne that noticed they were not natural formations, but had to be man-made, clean cut from the rock. However, the shapes they made were not from any documented human history. This unearthly scene was all lit by a pale green moon that hung over us, creating long and confused shadows. As we walked between the rock-hewn columns and arches, we knew this place must predate historic record. Just the scale of the structures told us that the engineering skills would be hard to reproduce even with modern knowledge, let alone work out how the unnatural geometry allowed some of the construction to remain standing, where the laws of current understanding should surely dictate it would fall to the ground. Around our feet lay the bodies of grotesque fish which had lived their lives in the bottoms of the ocean, their lidless eyes reflecting the glassy green moonlight. Should have gone back. I wish we'd gone back. It was as we neared the top of the tallest structure on this dark and isolated isle, we discovered the entrance to a huge cave, sealed with a 60-foot high, ornately carved stone door. The foul stench of rotting sea life seemed strongest here. As we were getting closer to look at the door, Jim called out. We rushed over to find him pointing at a small native amulet, half embedded into the seemingly random patterns. The amulet looked remarkably like the fisherman god design on the prow of the black canoe. However, before we could stop him, Jim whipped out his pocket knife and prized the amulet out of its setting. His whoop of joy was quickly drowned out by a cracking, moaning noise that came from the door. We all involuntarily backed away from the slowly opening entrance. But it was a sound that chilled my bones. A deep, sucking sound that rolled into a long, guttural roar. I ran. Jim and Carlos were right behind me. But it wasn't until we were almost back to the canoe that we heard the screams and realised that the student and Professor Osborne weren't with us. I hope it was quick. We'd almost got the canoe into the surf when we caught sight of the creature. It had to be 50 feet tall, bulbous human body with heavy clawed hands. Small, torn, bat-like wings hung useless on its back, but its head was the most shocking. Slitted, evil yellow eyes, hairless cranium, and with mouth parts like tentacles of an octopus. What have we done? Carlos stopped still, just stood in the knee-high surf, staring at this demon from the depths. We tried shouting at him and pulling on him, but he was a dead weight, and the tide was taking the canoe away from us. We had to leave him. There was no choice, we had to. No other choice. We were now only two in the canoe, paddling like the crazed. The depth-living giant was now close in its pursuit, with its tentacles reaching out, snapping at us at full stretch. Jim at the back of the canoe shouted to me and thrust into my hands the small amulet pulled from the tomb door. And kept saying, "I'm sorry," over and over. Then my vision was full with tentacle and sea spray, and once I blinked away the salt water, Jim was gone. The back of the canoe was empty. No more than 10 feet behind me, the creature was wading through the surf as if the crashing waves were mere fog. I turned back and paddled for my very soul. I have no idea how long it was, minutes or hours, but I finally dropped to the bottom of the canoe, exhausted, burning with fatigued muscles. Sleep washed over me, but this gave no relief from the horror. It was just the start of the nightmares that haunt me to this day. A creeping tentacle horror tracking me down, was about to catch up with me, reaching out for the amulet around my neck, pulling me down into the cold depths of the Pacific. The captain of the steamer that found me 2 days later said I was on the very verge of death and lucky to survive. Lucky. I know they're close now. I will not let them have me. Now I will go, I know not where, maybe to join the elders of that paradise isle.